Can we share lucid dreams with our loved ones? Does trauma leave a mark that can never be erased? What happened to keep a spirit trapped on a bridge? Today we test the believability of the Filicidal Ghost.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
Where we dive into the unknown and the unusual
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
So here's the thing.
This
is another listener submission.
Yes, it is.
Weird that we did 3 in a row.
I don't know if anyone notices or pays attention to these things. Like, we're very dialed in on it.
I know we did 3 in a row.
We know, yeah. Maybe you did too. Maybe
if you did.
Too.
Just how it's going right now.
Well, I'm gone, so it's a little bit of short notice. Like, I'm in Denver.
I had to pull this episode together real quick.
I'm back now.
Now you are back from Tuesday, but
I was in Denver.
We would not be able to record on our normal time.
Yeah.
So because of that, I threw together some listener submissions.
Make it sound like it. I just threw it together. I just took a couple of those.
It's like when you make like a 5-course meal. You're like, oh, I threw this together for you. You know, it's no big deal.
You threw it together for us. Like, they threw it together for us.
They did, and I appreciate their efforts. And
y'all are the sous chefs.
That's right. Absolutely. Assistant chef, getting in there, cutting up the leaks. But I would like to specifically thank Leela for joining our Patreon.
Layla?
I don't know.
L-E?
L-E-L-A. Leela.
Or Layla. Layla.
Either way, we appreciate you. Thank you for joining. There's so much over there that you can't experience. We appreciate you a lot. So before we jump into this story, these stories, we've got 4. And I want to explain a little bit about the title in case you're like, what is that? What's filicidal? Filicidal? What's that mean? Filicidal is when a parent murders their child. Because
got a fun topic today, Charlie, I see.
Every kind of murder has a title. Fratricide, I think it's killing your brother. I don't know more examples, but there are different ones. But filicidal is killing your child. So there's a couple of stories in here that center around that idea. I guess that's a light trigger warning.
I think that's solid.
So our first story comes from James from the UK. He said, quote, "Hi, lads."
Did he say hi, lads?
He said, "Hi, lads."
That's awesome.
This isn't the most interesting experience. And James, don't put yourself down. This is a good story. I think it's really interesting.
No one else knows it, so I can't defend you there, but I'm sure it's awesome.
We'll get to it, and you'll see why this is a paranormal conundrum.
He might not be self-deprecating either. He could be proudly saying, "This is my most interesting story."
He said he doesn't think it's interesting.
Oh, he doesn't think... He took time to write it, but...
this isn't the most interesting experience.
He has more interesting experiences that he's not sending?
I don't think that's what it is. I think he's just acknowledging.
Was he sending it to another podcast? You son of a bitch!
Anyway, he said I found it strange, and I wanted to tell someone. We got you. He said, I had a dream one night about some kids in a cabin. They poured out a pile of sugar and put a dip in the middle of it and poured in a pink goo. They put human hair in the goo, and it became this pink goo monster, like the movie The Blob, only a more milky pink color and the consistency of gum. I could see it slither through the pipes in the house, and it would stick eyes on stalks through the holes in the walls and drains. I was on a call with my girlfriend, and she told me she had a strange dream. I said, me too. And I told her to go first. And she told me she dreamt of a pink goo. I was in shock and fascinated. Her dream was a little more simplistic. It was simply the goo slithering through the pipes and sticking its eyes to the drains. The way she described the color and the consistency of the goo was spot on. I told her this, and we were both pretty shocked. I couldn't think of a non-paranormal explanation. Neither of us had consumed any similar media like The Blob. We hadn't discussed anything like this. I can't think of any reasonable non-paranormal explanation why both our subconsciouses would form this highly specific scenario. Anyway, keep up the good work. Thanks, James. End quote. So, it's weird. It's a weird story. What do you think of the pink goo? I guess we could talk more about it in the discussion if you want to save it.
Did he say that why there was a reason why they couldn't have the same stimuli?
He said they hadn't absorbed any of the same media recently, so they weren't in the same area. Like he was at home, like they were in separate homes.
Yeah, interesting. They are from the UK.
Okay.
And so is the Mighty Boosh, and there's a big pink thing there called Charlie. If anyone knows what I just referenced, please leave a comment on Spotify, and I'll personally shout you out. Yeah, no, I'm picturing the pink thing from
The Mighty Boosh?
The Mighty Boosh.
I've not seen that.
Named Charlie.
That's interesting.
I believe it's
weird.
A mustache.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I do have a mustache.
Hold on.
All right, so I just watched The Mighty Boosh.
With Charlie.
With Charlie. Charlie. Listen, I don't know if you watched that, James.
It makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know.
Shout out Noah Fielding and Julian Barrett.
So our next story. This is from Knox. From the great state of Florida. She said, quote, "Hello. I hope this reaches you all well. I'm a new listener. We appreciate you listening. And I enjoy your podcast so much. I honestly don't really know how to start this. So I'll start here." She said, "I'm a witch, if that makes sense. I believe in witchcraft and I worship the Greek gods. I grew up in a Catholic household, so it wasn't taught to me when growing up. My experiences are that if you know what a pendulum is, it's like a small crystal on a chain or a cord. I actually have a pendulum. I told you about it. Still haven't brought it here because I feel like you'd freak out.
I would not freak out.
I feel like you'd be nervous about it.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't be nervous about pendulum?
No.
Okay. I still want to bring
it. That's how you've talked before, right? Is that what am I thinking of? Where it's like yes or no?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I wouldn't be afraid.
It's kind of like a Ouija board.
Yeah, but you have to play it. It's not like it's just gonna like we're having an earthquake and it starts answering questions. This is in San Francisco.
Okay. So she said, I was first introduced to this by my mom. She was Catholic, but still spiritual in a way. I normally start to ask you questions to show me how it presents yes and no and maybe. Yes being vertical and no being horizontal. And maybe being in a circle. I also start by asking a security question, like when you play in a Ouija board, like, what's my name? How old am I? Who are you? And some other personal questions to make sure it knows who I am, and then it's not just a coincidence of the swinging. After I make sure it's not just a coincidence, I'll go about my questions and meditation. However, one day I decided to ask a kind of not serious question. I asked, am I human? And I repeatedly got no. Every time it would swing back and forth horizontally. Then I asked my security questions to make sure I was getting right answers. So I took this pretty seriously. I've done this with other people as well, and other forms of divination. And I keep getting the same answer to this question. No, I'm not human. And she said, ironically enough, I'm listening to your episode on Are Humans Naturally from Earth? Now it's also weird because I met a friend who had a very similar experience. So it's not just me. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me and others. I know it's not a big paranormal phenomenon, at least not to my knowledge, but this is what has been happening to me, and I believe other spiritualists for a while. And she ends by saying, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for taking the time on these podcasts. I enjoy them very much. And it's taken me a long time to find a good podcast. I'm glad it's yours. End story, end quote.
I don't think that she believes that it's coincidence.
I don't think so either.
She said maybe. And I get that, because I would say that as well. I think, but also like, by the way, shout out that episode. If you haven't listened to Are Humans Naturally from Earth or Not, that is, I feel like I'm in my groove, my element during that episode.
It was a good one.
Love that episode. I wish she would have given some theories on what that meant.
I know.
Like, okay, you're not human. Like, okay, let's take that as baseline. Let's take that as a fact. Like, I mean, maybe not really, but like, let's roll with it, okay? Like, let's say, okay, let's assume this is true. What does that mean?
I think she got freaked out by it. I think that answer scares her, which it would scare me too. I'm not saying she's wrong for that. I think it's a scary thing to hear, especially from an entity.
Yeah, I agree, but I feel like it's hard to just then shut it off.
I agree.
Like if you were given that, you'd start wondering, what does it mean? What could I be?
I think she does too.
So even if she doesn't have answers, I'd be curious what has run through her head.
Yeah, I would too.
Because really, there's not alien, fairy, like what other cryptid? Like, I mean, like
I don't know.
what other things, what other categories do you have that you're thinking of?
In my mind, it would be, this sounds terrible and scary, that human shell, but inside spirit is not human.
Mm.
That's the only thing I can come up with. I did some questions. I did some Googling to try to figure something out. I found nothing. I've not found this phenomenon anywhere else. I'm sure if I dug hard enough, I would. But it's just preliminary.
Could also be a lie.
Yes,
like she could be getting the same answer, but it doesn't mean it's a true answer.
That's
like,
true.
If she's connecting with the same thing, then there's going to be consistency there, but it doesn't mean that it's true.
I
wonder, what were her safety questions?
She not say her safety. She said a couple. She said, "What's my name?" I don't know how you answer that as a yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, unless she means like, is my name this, and then like, is my age this?
Must be that, yeah.
They're just like,
because they have to be yes or no's.
They're just like, yeah.
Spins like a C or and yeah.
Unless she's like 32, like, am I 31? Am I 30? Am I 32? Am I 34? And then it's all, but like, I don't know enough about it. I can't speak intelligently about how to do the pendulum.
I mean, you got it.
Yeah, but her safety questions don't make sense to me.
I think it depends how you ask them. Like, if you ask them like how she wrote them, they don't make sense. But if you ask them how you said them, then it does make sense.
So that's me interjecting. If we take it at her value, then her question is, what is my name?
Yeah, you can't answer that as a pendulum.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Is my name this?
Yeah.
But we don't know. So what do you think? What do you think it is? Why do you think it's answering no? Do you think it's just a lie?
I think it could be.
Okay. That's totally fair.
It's anything. It's like if you treat it like a Ouija board, it's it's startling when they get accurate information, but that doesn't, it's like when somebody says like, I'm your aunt, or I'm, it's like there's certain, like, not everything I think can be trusted. The consistency is creepy though, but
I agree. Story 3. And this takes place in St. Augustine,
Texas,
Florida.
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. On the coast there.
St. Augustine. Is that what you just said?
I said a couple different ways.
I know. I think I'm going to land on Augustine.
I think that's correct. Specifically, the Kelly O'Brien Mansion.
St. Augustine?
You need to mute yourself.
It's Augustine.
So he said, quote, this is from Chandler, by the way. Chandler said, quote, I was on a boat, a small JV-17 Carolina skiff. I don't know anything about boats. Like any other day, my dad and I decided to go out in the boat because we had nothing better to do. It was a normal day, a sunny and warm one in Florida. We were cruising along the Intercoastal when we got to marker 27, and we saw this big mansion. We knew it was abandoned because our neighbors were thinking about buying it, and they, for some reason, abruptly decided not to purchase it after seeing the house. We drove to the shore and anchored the boat, and we had to try not to get stung by the stinging nettles, and we made it to the courtyard. The house itself was very grand and pretty, but also very, very quiet, and a weird vibe, almost like it was watching you. In the courtyard, there was an old fountain with a little bit of rainwater and very dirty algae all over. There was also a bench and a path to the dock, but the dock was broken. My dad and I had gotten curious and decided to go onto the porch. It was made of wood, very overgrown on the sides, and the front door was locked up. But one window was broken and bordered, with lots of hornets' nests and spider webs everywhere. We then tried to look into the windows, but they were all boarded up, painted, clouded over, or had curtains. Only one window we were able to look through. And we saw a chair and a table with a lamp on it, and a mirror on the wall, and that's it. We then walked around to the side of the house, and we find nothing interesting. So we get off the porch, and we go to the back of the house. And we turn the corner, and bam! This door is wide open in the back. My dad knew it was supposed to be locked at all times. We knew we shouldn't have gone in, but the curiosity got the better of us, and we were drawn in. When we first stepped in, we looked around, and we saw to the left was vacuums and trash bags and brooms. And as we stepped further, we started to get a bit cold. Neither of us said anything. We looked around the bottom rooms, and they were empty. But we walked up the stairs. and as soon as we got upstairs, it became freezing cold, even though there was no AC in the entire house because it was old. We made it to the main room upstairs, and as we were facing the windows overlooking the intercoastal from above, we started to turn around because at that point, we were both getting weirded out. And then all of a sudden, slam! We both jumped. The closet door behind us had slammed shut, and we were both on the opposite side of the room. There's no way it was either of us that had shut the door. We were both super freaked out. We didn't say a word. We ran to our boat, and we didn't even care about getting stung by the nettles on the way out. We both wanted to get out of there ASAP. As soon as we walked out, we noticed it was extremely overcast, and we were looking from the window upstairs. Everything was bright and sunny. The weather doesn't switch up like that in 30 seconds, so I'm scared. But it doesn't end there. As we're getting into the boat, I look up out the window we had just come from. Originally, the curtains were shut, and we'd opened them to look at the intercoastal. But as I looked up, I saw a shadow figure, all black with grayish eyes, with almost lighter shadows and gray hair in a bun, dressed in what looked like a ruffled blouse, shutting the blinds. I was so shocked and stunned, I didn't say anything. I thought I was hallucinating. My dad and I were silent the whole way home. At dinner that night, it was just the two of us because my mom was working late at the hospital, and my brother was at his friend's house. We agreed to never go there again. We didn't speak about this for at least 2 months until the couple, our neighbors, who were thinking about buying the house, had us over for dinner because our families did this frequently, and it happened to be the wife's birthday. So we're talking when all of a sudden my dad says, "Why did you guys back out of the deal on the Kelly Mansion?" And the wife went silent and said, in contracts, due to a lawsuit a couple decades ago about this place, it's a law that the seller has to disclose any deaths or suicides in the house that they knew about. Now, Aubrey, the wife, then told us that it used to be a speakeasy, and a lot of mob bosses such as Al Capone stayed there. And supposedly, the top part was an inn. 5 children were murdered by a deranged woman who went psychopathic and murdered them all one night. After that incident, it was closed forever. I believe to this day that it was the lady who went crazy in the window. End quote.
Scary as
Yeah.
That is normally once an episode, at least once an episode, there's that striking visual that lasts beyond the story. And this one isn't as well. I'm not going to compare episodes. This one, the visual of them out on the boat looking up and seeing this ghostly figure shutting the blinds.
Oh, I hate that it was closed. They opened it and they see her closing it.
Yeah, it's like it was closed. They go up there and they know they opened it. And then they come down and they're seeing, like, they see the active, like, she's just like, no, they're supposed to be shut.
Yeah.
So creepy. The weather thing is strange to me. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Are you thinking like the weather actually was manipulated, or are you thinking what they were able to see out the window was manipulated? Because I don't think ghosts control the weather.
I don't think so either. I think what they're seeing at the window was manipulated. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. That they're not seeing it clearly because of where they are.
Yeah.
It seems like the ghost had control in that mansion. They shouldn't have gone in at all. It's such a horror movie trope that they went in.
Yeah. They really should not have gone in by any means. I understand curiosity and things like that. I mean, I would understand a little bit more if they were a couple 16-year-old kids instead of a father and a son. But do your adventures. I guess. That's right.
Yeah.
Nothing better to do out on the intercoastal.
Intercoastal 27.
Get a hobby. I'm just kidding. It's cool. It's cool. Go on and doing stuff. Is the story with the woman the namesake of the episode?
No.
Okay.
There's one more story, and this is the namesake.
I was going to ask if it was understood that the woman was the parent, or if it was just a lady that just killed 5 children.
It was just a lady.
I was curious because I was wondering if I missed that.
She was not the parent of these children.
Yeah, no wonder it was freezing cold up there. Also, wild that Al Capone stayed here.
Yeah, he stayed a lot of places, I think.
That was a terrible movie.
Oh, that was a bad movie. When did that come out? That was a while ago.
2020 or 2019. We watched it.
Was it Tom Hardy?
Yeah.
Not his best.
No, it's not his fault. You can only do so much.
That's true. Oh, man. Oh, God, he pooped himself. This is by Lauren. Shout out, Lauren. So Lauren tells us a story. It takes place on Cry Woman's Bridge in Rush County, Indiana.
The baby grew up and they're still crying. It's not Cry Baby Bridge anymore. She grown.
Cry Woman's Bridge.
Yeah.
This takes place in 1975 and in 2005.
All I could think of was just yelling like, put the toilet seat down. Also, not funny, but I was imagining when they were in the last story, when they see the ghost and they get the boat, and he was like, we didn't talk about it the whole way home. And 2 hours later at dinner, I was waiting for him to be like, my dad out of nowhere was just like, ah! It was hard to explain. And then asked to pass the mashed potatoes. All right, I'm sorry. You can go with Lauren's story now.
All right. So Lauren tells us a story. It's not her story. This is the story of her father. She said, quote, alrighty, so I'll be sharing my dad's story. Little background. My dad is a scientist at an international company. He's a very scientific-minded, skeptical, but always curious. Not religious by any means, but open to whatever his experiences are. My dad used to tell me this story, a scary bedtime story, but it later comes back to him. So my dad was 16 and lived near an old covered bridge just over the county line. He had 5 brothers, and they all rode bikes literally everywhere. They were fairly lower class, and the town was easily 3 miles away from the house. Their idea of fun was woodland adventures and nonsense in the backyard. Cry Woman's Bridge, not to be confused with the Cry Baby Bridge, which I did confuse it, was the root of the local haunting from the 100 years ago, where a small village originated. My dad and his brother Dave took a trip down there when they were bored to hunt for squirrels and snipes. I don't know what a snipe is. The oldest brother, who teased them regularly, Terry, dared them to cross Cry Woman's Bridge. My dad, being cocky, said, fine, no big deal. Many kids were warned it was dangerous due to old wood and risk of falling. The legend goes that the woman who moved to the village was under heavy suspicion. She was quiet, kept to herself, and lived alone. She was caught purchasing spices, nutmeg, and other items from the market, and was labeled a witch permanently. She came up pregnant a year later and gave birth to a baby who was stillborn with blue lips. The pitchforks and mob began to close in on her house and chase her, and they said that she had killed her own unborn. She took off with her baby down to the creek under the bridge, where she chose to lay her baby in the river and lay herself with the evidence. Now, as you approach the bridge, you'll hear a shriek filled with fear screaming for her baby. And that's the story of Cry Woman Bridge. My dad and his brother Dave made their way to the bridge, and as they progressed through the forest, it became darker and darker. With a BB gun on his shoulder, my dad said he was packing heat. They walked deeper to come upon the bridge. The temperature had dropped to what felt like 10 degrees, and both Dave and Jeff began to sweat looking at the bridge. They walked into the creek underneath as it was fairly low and dry. Suddenly they heard a shrill scream that sounded like a hawk, but it came closer and closer. It sounded more human than anything. My dad began panicking. Dave wanted to leave immediately. My dad said he wanted to bring back something to show to Terry. He reached up to break off a piece of the wood from the shredded and rotted boards underneath the bridge. Then Dave screamed. My dad froze, and they both met the gaze of a tall, dark, womanly figure in the distance. They began to hear a hysterical crying and shrieks and picked up their asses. My dad dropped his gun, and they sprinted back to the edge of the woods. They grabbed their bikes and made it home. They told their mother what they saw, and she replied, "You know, you should have left her alone." Now, 2005, I was 13, and my brother was 17. We were on our way home from a family reunion a bit further south, and we ended up driving near the location of Cry Woman's Bridge. My dad chuckling in the car and asked if we would like to stop and see if we can get to the famous bridge. Now, sadly, it's surrounded by cornfields and private property, but that did not stop my dad. The downside is that my mother begged him to stop and did not allow me to get out of the car because the way seemed dangerous. So him and my brother made their way across the cornfield and into the edge of the woods. About 10 minutes later, I recall my mother beginning to laugh as she saw my dad and brother full-on spurting from the woods across the cornfields, looking over their shoulders consistently. I was laughing hysterically until I saw the look on my dad and brother's face. It was the look of someone who had seen something tragic. They jumped the fence and got into the car, fully sweating and out of breath. I asked them what happened, and they told me, quote, "Don't worry about it." I continued to pry for information and demanded that they tell me what was happening since I wasn't allowed to go. My dad looked at me and said, "Just don't worry about it." Fast forward another 14 years, and still to this day, he will not tell me the full story. However, I've got one bit of information from him. He was retelling the story from his younger years when my nieces were glued to every word that he said. After they left the room, I asked my dad what he saw in 2005. He paused for a moment and said, quote, "I don't know what happens when you die. I just hope I never have to face that woman I saw standing in those woods. Her screams. I will remember them forever." I asked him why he couldn't have just told me that when I was 13. He followed up with, quote, "She will take the children of those that disturb her and drown them herself. I'm not willing to risk that." He also said, "I can't explain what I saw. How can I logically protect you from that?" End quote. And he walked away. It was awkward. My dad has a happy disposition, but I could tell asking him about it brought back some rough feelings. End quote. End story.
Feels like a movie.
Okay.
It does. It feels like a movie, doesn't it?
It's so scary.
It's like the part 1, part 2, it's like you have the, like, not like it, but you have the younger encounter and then you go back as an adult.
Yeah, it does. The way you say it, it does sound like it. It's scary to me. And you could argue that maybe she wasn't fratricidal, the ghost.
Because it was a stillborn?
Yeah, but...
Like the baby was already dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think is a bit of a dramatic story.
You're 2 for 2 here. Bloody Shadow.
Come on now.
She didn't kill it. It was already dead.
I should have
Now, she didn't kill it.
That's right.
You're 0 for 2.
Oh,
I'm keeping track.
All right, fine. The next one's going to be the best one.
The Midnight Man, but it'll be like, there's this game during the day. It's midnight somewhere. That's okay. I like the title. It just doesn't fit the story. But that's okay.
I'll go with it anyway.
That's all right.
But let's talk about these in the discussion. So, let's talk about the first 2 real quick. I think there's a chance that James and his girlfriend could have saw
The Mighty Boosh.
The Mighty Boosh. And or any other piece of media.
There had to have been some stimuli. Something.
Yeah. Or a story that they read or I don't know. You're right, some kind of stimulation to that. Because they didn't acknowledge each other.
It's just stimuli, not stimulation.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you're right.
No, I just don't want anyone to do you're a graduate degree. I don't want you to.
You're right. There must have been some kind of stimuli because I don't think they were sharing a dream. I don't know because it's hard to tell because they didn't acknowledge each other in the dream,
Mm-hmm.
They just had the same similar dream.
It's also not like a through line entity or something like that. Like, unless there's like this alien pink thing and it just like if you get abducted, that's what you remember when you were sleeping. I don't know. Like that. I mean, that's so out of left field. But I mean, it also doesn't have to be like that day. You know what I mean? Like I'll have a dream and then I'll be able to tie it back to something that happened like a week ago. Like if you take the time to try and see like what caused me to have this dream. And sometimes you just can't, and that's okay. And sometimes it is something the day before. But
have you ever shared a dream with somebody else?
I don't think so.
I've not.
I've had friends who've said they've have, like family members who claim to have similar dreams. I wonder if there was any influencing too.
I think so.
Like, because it's like they say when you tell a story and it like molds itself over time. Like if he had his dream and then talked to her and then it started warping what he remembered of his dream.
Like maybe he had the first part and then she had the second part and they kind of like combined them without realizing.
Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe they both just had the damn dream. I don't know.
I don't know.
If they did, I truly feel like.
Also feels a little bit like Slither to me, from what I know of Slither.
Okay. What year was there a year attached to this?
2022.
Probably it's not the Mighty Boosh. I think that was 2003.
Oh, it's a little bit different.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's believable. We're just trying to figure out where it came from. Do I believe that they had the same dream? Yeah, I don't think they're lying.
I agree.
Or a similar dream.
Yeah, I think they had a very
Substance.
similar dream. I don't know necessarily if it's paranormal, but I think they had the same dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then the next story with Knox about the pendulum. She asked if she was human and said no. You stumbled across an idea that I really like. That even though it's consistent, doesn't mean it's true.
They be lying.
Yeah.
Lying ghosts.
And she says that she's a practicing witch. She must know that all spirits are not necessarily truth tellers.
Mm-hmm. I see what I'm missing from that story is I want to know what she thinks because she's the one experiencing it. She's the one doing this pendulum. Does she I want to know how much she believes, whether or not it's true. Is it something that it's said and it doesn't feel correct to her, but it's, she's taking it as truth? Is it something that it's said and it shook her and then she started thinking about it and found other reasons why that might be true? You know what I mean? It's I'm very curious how she's perceiving it because we're so far away from this experience. And so I feel like this is one of those things where it comes down to a feeling.
Yeah.
How did she feel when she kept getting that answer? Did it feel like this thing's lying to me, or is it I need to discover more about myself along? We
didn't really get that in the submission. All we got really was what happened. I wish there was a little bit more into the feeling and why that's so unsettling for her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is unsettling.
Yeah, I know.
If I was in that situation, it would be unsettling and I'd start questioning things. But then that would be my answer. Be that's how I handled it. But then I'd be going into the what am I then?
Yeah. Yeah, because I'd like to know what her solution for that is. What is the reasoning behind that answer if it's not a straight up lie?
Also interesting where it'd be she would know. It's more it'd be one, in a scary version of this, it's you joke around, you're is so-and-so human? And I keep saying no. Because if it's yourself, you can self-analyze yourself.
Yeah.
You might not be correct, but you can start going through human characteristics, and it's a self-discovery path. But if it's someone else,
that's scary.
Is this person human? And I keep saying no. Then you start going okay, this person that I've invited into my life, whether it's friend, family, loved one, it's what are they?
Yeah, you start throwing salt at them every time you see them.
I mean, it is just as creepy if it's yourself, but it's it's a very unawareness of yourself.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's a lie. I like that idea a lot. It's a consistent lie. That somehow she's got this.
I wonder if it could be a sense of vulnerability, where by that I mean diminishing strength. It's when you're very confident in yourself, maybe you're not in a weakened state. But if it can manipulate your thought patterns and you start doubting yourself and you start questioning things, are you more easily manipulated then? I'm making this thing out to be very sinister, and that might not be the case. I just mean if you start questioning yourself, maybe there's other ideas that this thing can seep in. It's breaking the doorway open to getting whatever it wants out of the interaction. It's I'm breaking you down, and now I can mold you and plant ideas that maybe otherwise I couldn't.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's going for that. It could be taken very sinisterly, malevolently, where it wants to almost break the consciousness by almost gaslighting you in a way. You're human. You are. But it's but are you?
Maybe just can't hear her well, and it keeps hearing, "Are you human?" And it's no.
Well, that's another very scary answer itself. Then
I wonder if she asked if it was human. That'd be a very scary thing to ask.
That's very
also
scary
thinking on the fly. Am I human? Is a weird thing. But I guess you just assume that's almost a basic is this thing working? Am I getting a yes?
Is this mic on? Yeah. Ha 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 ha. All right. So the next story. Love this story. You're right. It's got a great image at the end. So this father and son, they get on the boat, on the specific boat that I do not remember the name of. And they go down the intercoastal and they see this mansion. And it's haunted. It's supposed to be haunted, locked up. And they go in, they can't see anything. And then they find the back door is open. And for some reason, they go in. And it's like kind of cold and like it's weird. And then they go upstairs. And that's when...
Then what happens?
And stuff gets weirder. And they're in this big room and they open the window.
And it's cold.
And it's freezing. It's Florida in the summer. I assume it's summer. They didn't say what time.
It's hot all the time.
It doesn't matter. It's always warm. But then there's this big slam. And thankfully, they do the right thing. They get the fuck out. And they're leaving. They run in the boat. And they look back. And they see this woman standing there, closing the curtains that they had opened.
Yeah. Good spark notes.
Thank you.
They're like, we just heard it. And I'm teasing because I do the same damn thing. I summarize it. I'm like, y'all just heard this. But
I know.
It's a good refresher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're 45 minutes in, so.
Yeah. So to me, it's a good story. It's a very good story. It's scary that it happened.
It's so haunted. This place is so haunted.
That's why the lady didn't buy it.
It's so haunted. And it's rare that we always get a great backstory into something. And I know I say this every time, but as humans, we look for the through lines and the connections. And sometimes we make them up even if they're not there to fit like a story element. But we had a background for what kind of haunting this could be.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of things that are, I always like looking for the things that aren't like over the top wild, but like, I don't want to say like typical haunting stuff, but you know, something that isn't like, you know, like levitating, running in the air, you know what I mean? Like things that like, and I'm not saying that those things can't happen, but things that are haunting elements that are a little bit easier to grasp onto, and multiple of them, and then witnesses. If you can combine those elements, it's pretty easy for me to dive into a believable.
Yeah.
But you have two people, nothing outside the realm of what you'd expect in a traditional haunting happens.
Right.
Still very scary. I'm not diminishing it. If I was there, I'd be crapping myself. Like, this is terrifying. And we have the backstory.
Yeah. It's not a good story.
What else could he have seen? Like, if you're imagining that he's just he's scared out of his mind, he's starting to see things. It's a stretch to be like, he imagined seeing a shadow. Even if he imagined the shadow in the window, something closed the blinds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's part of it too. It's not.
That's the
or he's lying, and I'm not going to accept that.
Well, no, I don't think that's the case. But that's like the physical proof, like something shut the curtains.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
The door slamming is technically physical proof too.
That's true. But
the window thing is weird.
Oh, the weather thing?
Yeah, that's a weird one.
It's a weird detail.
Unless it's like dimensional. Not dimensional, but time based. Like almost like he went back in time or to
maybe
a different
they lost
time.
time in there.
Maybe that could be like it was really like 45 minutes instead of like 10.
Yeah, no one was there to like check their time. Maybe they would have mentioned it, but still.
Yeah, I mean, normally you think of that for like an alien abduction, but in this case, it's just both of them. They had nothing better to do, so it's not like they were late for anything. Dinner.
Right. Could you imagine oh my God. So this is a scary thought. They walk in and they do their whole thing and then they go upstairs and they're stuck in that room just staring there for like an hour.
Yeah, like if someone else walked in there and they just see these two people, like their mouths agape, eyes wide open, and they're like, guys, and they're like, what? And then you're like, you good?
Yeah.
No, that's terrifying. Like the fly in the wall type of situation of like what actually happened. That's scary. I give it believable. I think it's a haunting. I think it's very scary and why y'all shouldn't go in abandoned mansions.
Yeah.
Even if the back door is open.
There's also like the even scarier idea. Well, I don't know about scarier, but also the more human idea that there definitely could be squatters there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is...
Especially the back door is open.
Because they got to get in.
That's right.
I mean, you could lock the door. If I was squatting and no one was living there, I probably would lock the door. Just being honest.
If you have a key. If you don't have a key.
Well, just don't, like... I was assuming that they were already there.
Oh.
Because then they would just lock it behind them.
Well, it could be broken. Oh, he said it was supposed to be locked, though. I don't know.
No, the squatter thing is for real. Not as scary as scary, but not as.
It's
scary.
a different kind of scary.
Yeah, but it's not like they're buying it; they're just visiting. But it's like the thought that you could have been watched and in harm's way without realizing it the whole time.
Yeah,
even though they might have been anyway.
It's the last story. Story about the dad in Indiana. So he went there when he was a kid, right? And then he went back when he was older with his son.
Were there nieces in two?
He was telling the nieces the story.
He was telling them the story at the house.
Yeah.
And then she approached him and was like, what happened in 2005? And he said, The Sims 2 came out and it had direct control. And it was amazing on console. That's not what he said.
No, it'd be interesting if he did say that. So he went there when he was a kid and he saw this woman who screamed and cried at them.
It's an urban legend, and his story sounds like an urban legend. Like, his story sounds like an urban legend, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Like, he got almost there. They heard a scream. He was reaching for a piece of wood, and then they saw the ghostly woman figure. Like, that doesn't sound like it's about the urban legend. That sounds like the urban legend.
But the fact that, it's this dad, it's harder to separate when it's like supposedly by some unknown person.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like told by your father, my dad told me so many ghost stories. I believe all of them. There's that authority to it.
Well, she witnessed one. I mean, she wasn't there for it, but she saw
the aftermath.
Because you got to assume or hope that he didn't just go in there and be like, all right, let's turn back and run and freak them out,
No, I believe they both saw it. I believe the father and son both saw this thing. Again.
Now, in times of terror and things like that, people don't act rationally all the time, and I understand that. But he experienced this absolutely horrifying thing young.
Yeah.
And he seems, and I don't know where he got this information that he's believing to be true, that she will then come after your children if you disturb her. That wasn't part of the lore, was it? Did you say that?
No, I didn't say that part of the lore.
Yeah, okay. So he goes as a youngster and sees her.
Yeah.
And then with children chuckles and was like, do you guys want to go see it? It's like, it'd be one thing if he only heard the howl.
Yeah.
Like if he had a creepy experience, but it wasn't like you could have doubt. If you could have doubt and you're like, what if there really is something there? If the first story is 100% true, he saw her.
Yeah.
And experienced her. And at this point in 2005, assume based on the fact that he wouldn't tell her about it, he did believe that she may kill your children if you disturb her. So despite seeing this woman at a young age, he chuckled and he had the idea of taking his son out there. It seems like there's a lack of rational thought. And then he technically risked the son and came back and was like, well, I'm not going to tell my daughter who didn't go there. And you know what I mean? Like, I know it's like the father's daughter, the moms and sons. Like, there's like that different connection. But
yes,
there is, father, like maybe he's following some type of scientific method that I'm not up to date on. But the whole rationale seems a little strange to me for someone that got so much concrete evidence at a young age.
Okay.
Unless the first, I hate to say it, unless the first one's a story and the second one's real. First one, he's like, that's a damn good story. And the second one actually happened. And he's like, that was a lot.
I have two thoughts. One thought is like, what if, when you experience something, even, we've experienced things, but the farther away you get from it, you feel almost separate from it. Like, even you said that your story feels more like you remember the story rather than the event.
Sure.
And that happens with paranormal events all the time. I wonder if that's how he felt. Like, I remember the story more than the actual event.
The detail of she'll kill family or she'll kill children if you disturb her. I would never risk my son. And I'm not challenging his fatherhood. I'm not trying to put that out there.
Right.
I'm just saying,
if he knew that beforehand.
He got so much concrete evidence during the first story. If the first story was like halfway, and then he's like, let me have this shared experience with my son, and maybe it'll give, it's just like it's like,
Maybe he didn't realize that last part the first time. But like when he went back, like, okay, we don't know what happened. But what if she actually
said something?
Yes.
That's terrifying.
Yes. That's what I think.
That would give him more of an out in my book, and we don't know what happened.
I mean, maybe I'm trying to throw him a bone.
Here are the rules. The demon code prevents.
It seems so much scarier the second time.
Yeah, well,
so that's what I think.
Yeah, she's like, you dropped your gun. You got this ghost with a gun.
It's a BB gun. Shoot your eye out, kid.
He's like, you're a filicide. And she's like, I didn't kill him. Kill her.
Well, someone's gonna name a story. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. I don't know where I fall on it because you're right. Rationally, if you got that much proof when you're a kid, although we talk about it all the time, we want to go ghost hunting again. It's not the same level, you know. But like we want to.
If I now this could be not true. This is me saying without this experience, but. Well, okay, let me ask you. Have you ever been back to that theater alone?
Oh, Sanford?
Yeah.
No, I never did.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we go ghost hunting because we had an experience, but it would like, I feel like we still have answers or questions. We still have questions.
We want answers.
We've been years building our credibility. But you know what? Like, okay. If we went to the cemetery and we saw something so concrete, so terrifying, maybe we'd go back, but it's kind of like, I feel like it'd be like, okay, we did it. Like, we know, like, I don't want to experience that again. You know what I mean? Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I would.
I don't know.
It's really and it's really creepy to think about her saying it there. And maybe that is the case. But if he knew that before stopping with the son, that makes no sense to me.
I don't think that's the thing. I don't think he did. I really do believe it was the second time was so much scarier. That's what I believe. That's what I personally believe. That's why I go believable in this. I think
I go viable.
So yeah, I go believable.
And I'll stay at viable for now.
Thank you for listening to the Filicidal Ghost.
The what?
Filicidal?
No.
Filicidal. For the Filicidal Ghost. Maybe not the most accurate
the bloody
name.
shadow Filicidal Ghost who can answer more than yes or no questions in the pendulum.
Put that on a graphic. Thank you for submitting your stories. We appreciate all your stories. You know, maybe some of them have explanations. Maybe some of them don't.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
If you are a listener and you have a paranormal story and you want it on this podcast, what should you do?
Well,
pop quiz.
One thing you can do is you message us directly, and then about 6 months later, I'll get back to you on Facebook Messenger and send you a link, which is what I did today. But if you want it faster than that, you can go to our website and you can click Submit My Experience, and don't be intimidated by the text box. It's a little small.
In the form.
It's a little small. But you know what you can do? You can go on your notes or your Word app and just type.
It can be as big as you want.
And just copy it and paste it.
That is right. That's believingthebizarre.com. Submit your experience. We love them. We love getting them. We've heard from a lot of listeners. They love the listener submissions. And it is just that close connection to the paranormal. And just reminding us, me, Charlie, everyone, that it's not just these big paranormal stories that seem larger than life. It's all these people, so many people in the world have these strange, unexplainable experiences. And it's like the more you stack them up and the more you hear them, let's say 50% are not true.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't mean lying. I mean that
there's other explanations.
There's other explanations. Let's say 50% of them, but that means, and that's a random number, but like what if half are real? There's a lot of really, really strange and bizarre things out there.
That's true. But you know what? Even if you're tired of listener submissions, next week is regularly scheduled programming. And if you like these stories and you want to let us know, where can you do that, Tyler?
You can, if you're listening on Apple, you can leave a comment on the entire podcast as a whole, which it's like one thought, you know what I mean? You gotta, whatever comment you make, it's an umbrella thought. It can't just be on one episode.
Umbrella thought.
You gotta give it over the whole.
Say something like, "Oh man, that's great."
Oh man, that's great. If you're listening on Spotify, You can currently leave 228 comments. Yeah, you can comment on every single episode. We love them. We love the dialogue. We can now reply to people, which I've been trying to get some replies out there. Charlie,
yes.
What have the people said?
On Spotify?
Yeah.
So the people on the last episode left a couple comments that I'd like to read to you. The first one is from Chris. Me at 9 p.m. No, not Applejack.
Is it really Chris? I think it was Kyra.
Oh, Krys.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's Chris.
Lee said, what if the kid under the bed is the real one and the one that was in the bathroom was a doppelganger?
That's really creepy. There was like a little comic that I shared to our Instagram story. So it's probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But it was like, mommy or like, daddy, there's a monster in the closet. And he goes and checks, and it's his daughter. And she's like, there's something in the bed. And there's like the shot behind him, and she's like sitting up. Yeah. Very creepy. Very creepy.
If the real one was under the bed, why is she going shh?
Yeah, that's why if my son's like knocking on the door at night, I just ignore it. Solve that shit in the morning. My son would be able to survive the night. Good life. I'm totally
that's so
kidding.
Funny.
I hope everyone understands.
This is from Peter. The cat and alien lived.
That's right. We were talking about how animals, if they're shown in horror films, typically don't make it.
Mm-hmm. Spoilers for.
I meant on Earth.
Oh, okay. Well, the newest Quiet Place. Spoilers. Big spoilers. Cat makes it. And the last one I'm going to read from Rocky. If you find a woman hiding in your closet, creepy, you definitely not read the creepypasta. My wife keeps peeking at me around the corner.
I like me some creepypastas.
I do, but I don't want to read that one.
I haven't. We did. Remember we threw that one in La Paxolita just because.
What was it? Oh, the smooth face lady. Or
no, it was.
I know what you're talking about. We had my wife read it. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I just remember it was like 2020, which is when Believe in the Bizarre started, and I was driving with like my kayak. I used to kayak more.
Yeah.
And I was driving the kayak, and I was always listening to No Sleep and other creepy podcasts. The Expressionless.
Yes,
that's what it was.
That's right.
And I heard it, and I was just like, like that was so scary. And
Steph did really good.
It was like a doll. She did for sure. It was like a doll body or doll head.
Yeah.
And then we was doing a lot of Paxolita, which I think is episode 9. And I was just like, we got to do it. Like, it's sometimes we forget that we can do whatever we want.
That's true.
Like we are so structured in our own way. It's like we built the rules, but it's also like, man, we can't do that. It's against and it's like, wait a minute.
We do get lost. That's why we did 3 listener submissions in a row.
Just to rebel. One of us might get fired. But we're going to do our best to, make up for that.
Heads up, it's Ben.
Yeah, Ben. Ben will be
just kidding, Ben. It's the second time we made that joke in 2 episodes.
Yeah, he's not going over. He's part owner, actually.
That's right.
And that's a fact.
That's true.
But hey, we appreciate you guys for listening. We appreciate everyone for sending in their stories.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being haunted as fuck. Setting your stories and doing creepy things and things you shouldn't be doing.
Thank you, Tyler's mom and dad, for listening.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys. I'm a little tired, guys.
Longtime listeners.
I'm a little sleepy.
But yeah, we appreciate you guys. Check out on Patreon if you want more bonus content. There's a lot. There's quizzes. There's games. We watch horror movies. We watch horror movies and then review them. We watch horror movies with you guys directly and chat about it in real time.
Yeah.
On Netflix, Google Meets, where we just meet up and talk.
Coming up this week. This comes out.
Yeah, this week when this comes out.
Yeah.
Meet up and talk. We talk about things beyond the podcast.
Beyond the Bizarre.
Beyond the Bizarre. There's a lot of bonus stuff that we're throwing out every single month. And if you like the podcast, you'll probably enjoy that too. So go check that out if you're interested. But if not, we appreciate that you're here listening right now. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast that's going to work on accurate titles.
Oh, it's a little shady here.
Appreciate you. Charlie knows I'm messing with him. Don't anybody be like, hey, Tyler's really coming down hard. We're both laughing. You can hear it. You can hear the smiles on our faces.
We're so tired.
Seriously, thank you guys so much. As always, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre.
A podcast as bizarre as you are.